This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
That indeed it is. And we're doing some open lines right now where you guys can share your thoughts, your theories, your opinions on the cases that we are following for you. If you want to weigh in, it's 8885-KILLER, 888-554-5537 to share your feedback on the many stories that we are covering for you here on the podcast. Tony Bruschi, that is me, Stacey Cole, along with us. And we got some calls. Let's go to some about Bryan Kohberger and hear some opinions. Hi.
Tony, this is John from South Carolina. Hey, about the Kohberger case, I'm just wondering if he's going to pull the card that he was going to buy drugs like he's probably done many times before, and he's gone into the house and he saw these murdered bodies and freaked out and took off. And I'm just wondering if that's the card he's going to play. You know, that's why he was there so many times over the months, saying that he was buying drugs and something like that. Kind of interesting how they're going to try to get out of this deal. But anyways, love you, Tony. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's an interesting one because you sit here and you debate in your mind, how are they going to defend this guy with so much very damning evidence? Yes, I could see that in some ways, but in many others, no. I mean, why would he have the pictures on his phone then of the girls? Why would he, the bizarre kind of stalking-like behavior that was seen? Again, there's so many pieces of circumstantial evidence in this case, but it all ends up painting a much larger picture. If you just look at one little piece of the pie, you could look at that and see that as being, maybe that's the story. But then you got to look at the rest of the ingredients in that pie and go, yeah, I don't think it's quite that. What do you think?
Well, and the fact, John made an interesting point that, maybe he walked in and freaked out, but this was also a guy, correct me if I'm wrong, but his history is he is into criminal activity, education wise. So anything that he might have seen should not throw him off. This is his wheelhouse.
It's one thing to study it though, and it's one thing to be immersed in it, like physically in a crime scene. So if he's never been in a crime scene and he's a healthy, normal, quote unquote, adult, I think that would very much, somewhat traumatize you or throw you off. But in this case, I don't know. I mean, I think there's some sort of coldness to this individual where I don't know that these sort of things really have the visceral effect that they would on most of us. Yeah,
I agree with that. This whole thing, I want to know. I mean, I'm impatient. I want to know, did he do this? I think he did it.
All the signs certainly point to it. I mean, it would not be fun being this person's defense attorney or attorneys. They've now petitioned for a second one, and a second one that can also try death cases. And the reason for that likely being is that in Idaho, you need two qualified, however you qualify to be a death case attorney, you need two of them representing you from the state if you're going to be tried with death. So they're now going to have two on hand, which I think is totally appropriate. I mean, he should be tried for this, and he should face the death penalty due to the nature of this crime. How bizarre. It seems it's very much planned in cold blood. Excuse me. And I think we're going to see a lot of more evidence, a lot more striking evidence come out after discovery is done, once this thing actually goes to trial, if it goes to trial, if not just in June during those hearings, kind of the mini trial, that I would honestly, I'm still 50-50 in whether or not Kohberger is going to plead guilty or not guilty, because they're still going to do that preliminary hearing in which they lay out the case of what they have. And if they have so much stuff, I would not be surprised if Kohberger pleads a condition of guilty, but guilty with the condition that death maybe comes off the table.
Well, and didn't his friends come out and say that he was a bully, he was addicted to heroin or cocaine or something at some point? Yeah. is he going to claim that maybe he was under the influence of something and doesn't recall doing any of this?
He might, but it doesn't change it. If he, that just points that you did it, and all the evidence is pointing that you did it. So I don't know that that's going to help in any way, shape, or form on his defense. But I think the only thing that he can really hope for at this point, if he is in fact the killer, of not being executed, of finding some way to bargain that. However, I wonder, the more I look at this, the more stories we hear about him in prison. We had one the other day of how he obsessively watches the coverage of himself in prison. So
okay, and that's twisted because if you commit a crime, I can't imagine you're going to sit and watch the coverage.
Oh, this guy apparently is on it. Very quiet, keeps to himself, but very much into his own coverage. So it makes me wonder, is this some twisted plot of his of he wanted to do this. He knew eventually he'd get caught, and he's just making the most of it mentally for himself and soaking every minute of this in, and maybe ultimately wants to die. Could this be in some way, shape, or form just a very twisted suicide plot where eventually the state kills you because you carry out this heinous crime that you've been studying how to do for so long, and this is how you want to go out. You don't want to just kill yourself and go out. You want to do something horrible and feel everything that you've been studying that people feel who are these sort of killers, and live it. I don't know. I mean, there's the crazier motives I think are out there than just that. But the things that drive people, you never really know.
Tony, do you think he's listening to your podcast?
I don't know that he has access to podcasts in prison, but who knows? Maybe.
How creepy would that be to find out that he's listening to you and following your theories?
Yeah, maybe. It's I guess possible if they can listen to podcasts. But
do they have access to computers?
I don't know. I know he has access to television at the very least. So
interesting.
I suppose it's a possibility. The other creepy thing is all the women who are sending him love letters and professing.
Oh my God. What gets into a woman that, there is a very specific type of woman that is attracted to men in prison. And, they've done studies on these women. I just don't understand, the men are not accessible to them. So it's just this fantasy world, because you're never going to have a life with this person, especially the ones on death row. They're not getting out.
But there's conjugal visits. But I don't know. That's a whole other story. I've tried to dissect that with some psychologists on the show before, and it's a condition. And these people are clearly sick. But in my mind too, it's like these people are clearly sick, and we don't do anything. We can't do anything by law to help them or change them or anything like that. It's their own choice to act this way. But if you want somebody with a giant red flag that could potentially do harm to themselves or others, I think it's someone who professes their love to a accused killer who's behind bars for such a horrible crime. Like, you really are attracted to that. There's something wrong with you. You are now in danger. But
it's like the ultimate pen pal, that, somehow you're lacking something in your life, and you've got this literally captive audience in this man, typically that is behind bars. It's frightening. Talk about bad boy syndrome, that you are really after the bad boy.
You are into the really, really bad boys.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers podcast
With Tony Bruschi.
If you want to weigh in on any of the things that we are talking about, go ahead and give us a call. 888-5-KILLER, 888-554-5537 to share your thoughts, theories on the cases, the full list of cases in the episode description. My name is Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.